And we're going to start in a seated position, Sukhasana, with your legs crossed. But we're going to take a moment to ground, and then we are going to stay in that position for the our first two postures. It's going to be a seated twist. So if you find sitting in Sukhasana or sitting in a cross-legged position is just uncomfortable for long periods of time, here's the first place that I'm going to say, take your block, your yoga block or your book, and just put it under your butt like a chair, because it's going to create a little space for your hips and it's going to let your knees relax into place. But if you're comfortable in your Sukhasana and all things are just fine to sit in that position for a little bit of time, take a second to just find your way, get nice and comfy. And then for a moment, we're just going to take hands to the belly, hands to the heart, allow your eyes to close down, and just take a few moments to just tune into your breath. And there's no need to force or change the breath, but just allow a moment here to just pay attention to your inhalation and pay attention to your exhalation. And then as you start to find maybe that quieter mind here, just allowing things to slow down, even just slightly, tune in and notice where's your mind at. So if your mind is still racing, or if you're still thinking about your day, do an honest observation and just ask yourself, what can you set down, knowing all that stuff will still be there when you're done with your practice. And if there's anything that you can set down or let go of, or just allow to kind of pass through without too much judgment, start to allow that to happen. And then just tune into your listening, or your sense of listening, and notice the sounds in the room that you're working in. And then maybe notice just beyond the room that you're working in, you might notice the sounds of your house, or maybe the world slightly outside of your house. And then as you start to listen into the sounds of the room that you're working in and the sounds of your house, take a moment here just to kind of acknowledge that when we work within our house or our home, sometimes there are noises and sounds that can be distracting in our practice. And we start to become aware of the things or the noises within our house or our room that we can ignore, and then acknowledge that there are sometimes things that we cannot ignore and you'll have to address them. So just allow yourself that just moment to say, I know there are some things I can let go of for right now, and then there's some things that will just present themselves and I'll have to take care of. And then before we move away from this place of stillness, take a moment here to set an intention to honor your mind and your body throughout your practice, never doing anything in your practice that would cause your body pain, and treating yourself with love, care, and respect. And then with that intention set, if your eyes were closed, gently open them and then just assess your seat. So if you need to readjust your seat, switch the crossing your legs, anything that's going to make you comfortable, because we are staying in a cross-legged position, but just know that you have the option to adjust anything that you need to. First position we're going to get into from here is going to be a seated twist. So we're going to start by rotating in one direction. Catch a little handhold on the outside edge of your knee, and you're going to allow that handhold. So you're going to find a little bit of efforting in your arm and your hand, but everything else you're going to try and soften. So once you've got your twist of the rotation in your spine, then you're going to add your head as well. So you're twisting, let's say you're twisting to the right. So now you're going to turn your head to the left and then tuck your chin down slightly. And that's where we're going to stay. So if you can find that position, and then if you got there right away and your head and your neck are like, no, thanks, I don't want that, leave the head and neck part off and just stick with the twist. But if it feels available to stay there, chin tucked down, and then start to find some softness here. Soften through your shoulders. See if you can find a sense of softening in your abdomen, the soft tissue of the belly, and then see if you can start to find just a little softness around the outer edges of your ribs. And then take a moment right away to assess. If you're breathing comfortably, you can take a nice, generous inhale, a slow but natural exhale. All things good, stay right where you are. But if you're finding right away that you're laboring in your breath, you might choose to release your head and neck or soften up your rotation. But if all is feeling good, soften into that stillness. You can allow your eyes to close down if that feels like a good way to go, or maybe just soften your gaze. Take one more breath here. And then if you opted for the tilt of the head and the turn of the head, start by lifting your chin up slightly, releasing that head rotation, and then come back to center. Take a nice big breath, let your lungs fill up. Notice that slight variation. One side might feel a little different than the other. And then just ask yourself, do you need to readjust your seat? Do you want to switch the cross in your legs? Do you feel like now a little cushion under your butt would be more beneficial? So if there's anything that you need to readjust, take a second to do it. And then when you're ready, we're going to take our twist to the other side. So rotating now to your left, find your rotation first. And then once you feel like you found it, if it feels right, add the head turn. So you're going to turn away from the left, turning your head to the right, and then allow your chin to tuck down slightly. And then once you found a position that works good for you, invite some softness in. So again, there's still a little bit of efforting in your hand hold and in the arm that's helping leverage into that twist. But anywhere else that you can soften your ribs, soften the soft tissue in your belly. We're halfway through our hold on this side, so just check with your breath real quick. Make sure you're breathing comfortably. You can take a nice, generous inhale and a slow but natural exhale. Take one more breath here. And then if you opted for the head turn and the tilt down, start by lifting your chin up, bring your head to neutral, and then unwind. And then as you come back to center, take that nice full breath, fill your lungs up. Cool. And then maybe just take a couple little figure eights with your nose just to kind of soothe out anything you may have come across in your head and your neck. Maybe even shrug out your shoulders a little bit just to make sure everything feels fine. And then when you feel like you've kind of worked all that out, we're going to take it into a wide leg seat. So stretch your legs out nice and wide as feels good to you. And if you had your block or a blanket under your butt for a little bit of extra lift in the hips, maybe move that out of the way now. Come to a wide position with your legs that feels right to you. So just go to a depth that you know you can sustain. And then we're going to lean forward, but you're going to let your hips move with you. You're going to let your toes and your knees move with you. So everything is going to come forward as you fold into a shape that feels sustainable. If you're super bendy and super stretching, you got your legs super wide and you can come belly and chest down, that's awesome. We can't all get there. So you go to the depth that feels good to you and then something you can soften into. If you want to find a soft letting go of the inner thighs, a soft letting go through the muscles in the back of the body, soften your shoulders, soften your arms. We're about halfway through our hold in this position. So if you feel like you've lost sensation or aren't finding it as much anymore, you might choose to sink a little bit further in your fold or step your feet a little bit wider and then soften everything right back into that fold. Or you might feel the opposite. You might feel like you've gone too far. And so you might want to dial it back, maybe come up a little higher or walk your legs in a little bit closer. But if all is feeling good or if you readjusted in a way that feels right, invite that softness back in. Check in with your breath. Take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, slowly start to bring yourself up and out of that fold. We're going to grab the backs of our knees, bend your knees, bring your legs together, and then just take a couple of little gentle windshield wipers just to kind of move some fluid back into the hips, work out any of that dull ache you may have come across in the hips, and then see how everything is feeling. From here, we're going to come into a hero's pose, and I'm going to give you the prop to use. And then you can choose whether or not you want to actually use your block. I'm going to turn my back to you just so you can see. So you're going to step your knees just slightly wide so that you can bring your block in between your heels. And then you'll let your toes go and then sit back onto your block. And then you're going to readjust from here. So if this doesn't feel like a good position, you might choose to come a little higher on the block, maybe turn it to the medium setting or stack a second book under your bum. Or if it's all feeling good, or maybe you need just even more height, so you might choose to take your block onto the highest setting. So you're going to go back as far in your seat as feels right to your knees, and you can sit in comfortably. Once you found a height with your prop that feels right, take a second to just assess your legs. So there's a slight external rotation. So the heels are slightly out away from your butt. That's what we're kind of shooting for. So if you can find a comfortable position for the tops of the feet, the ankles, and then let your heels kind of fall out a little bit. That's the first part. And if that feels great, then we're going to add on bringing a little bit of work into the upper body as well. So you're going to bring your prayer hands behind the back, and then see if you can find a comfortable position there. So what we're really shooting for is just an opening through the chest and the collarbones. So if it feels better to just kind of clasp your hands behind the back, if that feels more accessible, just do that. But we want to make sure that we're comfortable in our seat to start. And then if all else is there, then we add on the upper body part as well. So maybe prayer hands together, maybe you just catch hold of your elbows, or maybe you just clasp hands behind the back. Once you've got a position that works good for your legs and good for your hands, then just invite that softness back in. Soften into your breath. See if you can soften through your quadricep muscles. See if you can really find some letting go in the thighs. So this might be, you might notice your knees. If they're shooting or electric or zinging pain in the knees, you're going to want to come out of this right away and readjust your seat and maybe just work in the upper body. But if all is feeling good, soften your quadricep muscles, soften your glutes, soften your shoulders. We're halfway through our hold in this posture, so just check in, make sure everything is still feeling good. Notice if you picked up tension in your jaw or in your shoulders, see where can you let go. Take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, if you're holding prayer hands or clasping your hands behind the back, Gently release them. Maybe wiggle out your hands, wiggle out your wrists, wiggle out your shoulders, work out anything you may have come across there. And then when you feel ready, slowly and mindfully lift your butt away from your prop. You're going to move your block or your stack of books out of the way. And then as you come into a tabletop position, we're just going to take 3 cat-cows here just to bring a little fluid movement back into your spine. Inhale as you drop your belly, lift your chest, lift your tail. Exhale as you round your back. Inhale as you drop your belly. Exhale to round. Awesome. One more cycle of breath. Beautiful. And then from this tabletop position, we're going to find our way right into our first low lunge. So step your right foot forward or your left, whichever you prefer to start with. And then you're going to walk your back knee back to a point that feels good. Now, here's a great place where you can take your block or your stack of books and bring it in front of you and use it to bring the floor up to meet you a little bit. I personally like the medium setting for this particular posture, but you can choose any variation or leave the block or the prop off altogether, especially if you find that your hands comfortably rest on the floor or if you come deeper down onto your elbows and forearms. So if you don't like using a prop for that, no worries. But if it feels good to bring a little bit of support in, prop that block or books underneath your elbows and forearms. And then once you've got a lunge that's working good for you, invite some softness in. Take one more breath here. And then slowly start to bring yourself up and out. So if your elbows and forearms are down, just kind of prop yourself up, bring yourself back up, slide that foot in, find your tabletop position, and then just rock your hips a little side to side. Bring a little fluid back into the hips, move it around. From here, we're going to stick with that same side. So the leg that was forward, that is going to be our next leg that we're going to work with. So half Malasana is where we're going towards next. I'm going to turn facing the camera just so you can see my setup, and then you can readjust in any way that feels good. So the leg that was forward, that leg is now going to come out to the side in an external rotation. You're going to take your stack of books or your yoga block, Start with the medium setting, see how that feels, and then you might choose to adjust. You might choose to flip it to the lower setting if that's a comfortable way for your body to sit in. And then you might choose to take it a little taller, maybe taking that second book and stacking it on top. So you're going to choose your own adventure onto the depth. And if all of that doesn't feel good and you can sit your butt way down into that low Malasana position, just make sure that that leg that's not in your Malasana feels comfortable. So we've got our bottom leg, or the leg that's not working, just in a bent knee position. And you can readjust that in any way that feels good. But what we're shooting for is the leg that was in front. That's what we're looking for to find that work there. Now, that leg, we're going to take our arm and gently lean into it. So we're going to think about taking the back of the arm right against that inner thigh and just let the weight of your arm do the rest of the work. You're going to soften the muscles in your quads. You're going to soften the muscles in your inner thigh best you can. Just let your arm be heavy. You don't need to push against it, but just let your arm be heavy against the inner thigh. And then whatever else your other hand wants to do, just let it rest somewhere comfortable. And then if it feels good to do so, maybe just close your eyes down or soften your gaze. And then just right away check in with your breath. Make sure you're taking a nice comfortable inhalation, fill up your lungs, and a slow but natural exhalation. Your leg that's in that half Malasana position. So for me, it's my right leg. If you were in the right leg lunge, then it hopefully will be your right leg as well. If you notice that you're picking up tension right up against that inner thigh, see if you can just create a little space. Think about lifting your ribs up and away, and then soften the muscles in the inner thigh. And then see if you can maintain that softness there. So we're shooting for finding that softness in the muscle tissue so that we can go deeper, finding that the joints and the ligaments. So we want to find the softening in the muscles so that we can get our way into the connective tissue. Take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, if your arm was against the inner thigh, go ahead and release it. Slowly and mindfully walk that leg in. And then you're just going to lift your butt up and off your block, find your way back into a tabletop position. And then we're just going to kind of wiggle those hips around again. Bop your hips a little side to side. Find any little gentle bit of movement here that feels good, even if it feels good to take a down dog. So if you're in the mood for a down dog, here might be a nice place to do so. Working all those little dull aches out. And then when you feel ready, we're going to find our lunge to the other side. So if you used your props for one side, you might opt to take them to the other side with you, stepping your left foot forward, and then finding that lunge that works good for you. So it does not need to be an extreme lunge. You might be in that 99Z situation. And if you're just having trouble finding that connection point there, you might just choose to draw your tailbone down slightly just so you find sensation through the front of the right, through the front of the right hip, or where your front pocket would be. But if a deeper lunge feels nice to you and you can settle into it, you just go to the depth that works good for you and then invite that softness in. Take a moment to check in with your breath. Just make sure you're still breathing comfortably. Lunges can be challenging, but if we can find that softness, that letting go, so that we can relax the muscle tissue best of our ability and then get into that deeper connective tissue, which isn't always as easy as I say. So just notice your breath here. If you're breathing comfortably, even though there's maybe just a little bit of in your brain, find what softness you can. Take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, slowly start to bring yourself out, lifting up out of that lunge, stepping that front leg back, finding your tabletop position, maybe rocking your hips a little side to side. Just find some gentle movement to kind of work out any dual ache you might have come across. Awesome. And then whatever leg was forward. So for me, it was the left leg, but whatever leg was forward on your position, now we're going to find that half Malasana. So I'm going to turn and face the camera again. So you're going to place your block somewhere so that you can sit your butt onto it. And then that left leg is going to come out in that Malasana position. And then whatever feels the most comfortable for your right leg. So that might be a little variation. For me, it feels fine to have the knee down, but if that's too stressful on the knee, then you might opt for more of a half butterfly situation that might feel a little bit more comfortable. But you choose your variation with the outer leg, the leg that's not getting the work, and then take that other arm inside of the inner thigh and just let that weight of your arm rest against the inner thigh. Don't try to push your leg out into any depth that it shouldn't go, but just let your arm be kind of heavy against your inner thigh, and then invite some softness back in. Take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, slowly start to come out. So you might choose to lift your butt up, move your prop out of the way, and then find your way back into a tabletop position just for a moment. Just you kind of wiggle the hips out, maybe wiggle out your toes, wiggle out your ankles, anything that you may have come across there. Maybe even take a down dog if that feels like an appropriate way to go. Maybe lift the hips up. And then once you feel like you've kind of got everything worked out, we're going to flip around so that we can sit our butt down onto the ground and find our way into a forward fold. So with a nice generous bend in the knees, wiggle around into your sits bones so you find a good comfortable position. Here's another place too where a block can be of benefit. I don't personally find the block to help me in my forward fold, but you can sit on your block. It brings the floor up to meet, and then you can fold in a nice gentle position if that feels like a good way to go. For me personally, that doesn't work for my hips, but it does work for some people. So just know that that's available if you feel like could be of benefit. So you're going to let your legs be soft, let your toes turn out in any way that they go. Fold yourself over to a depth that is appropriate to you. And then just invite some softness in. Soften through the back of your body, soften your arms, soften your jaw. Take a moment to do a quick assess and just notice your breath. If you feel like you've lost sensation, you might choose to create a little space and maybe go a little deeper into your fold. Or if you've found that there's a little too much sensation, you might choose to dial it back just a little bit. So find an appropriate depth that's working good for you, and then find that stillness again, softening through the back of your body. Take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, slowly start to bring yourself up. Take your time as you come up, and we're going to bend the knees just to get a little fluid movement back into the spine. So hold on to your knees. Inhale, lift your chest, squeeze your shoulder blades. Exhale, round your back and just hang into your shoulders a little bit. Inhale to lift your chest. Exhale to round your back. Awesome. One more just like that. Inhale to lift. Exhale to round. And then from here, we're going to start to find our way down onto the ground, onto our back. But have your block or your books handy, because the first position we're going to get to is going to be a supported bridge. So as you come down onto your back, take a second. Get your clothes in a good, comfortable position. Make sure everything feels like it's in the right place. And then you're going to take your block, and you'll choose, if you're using your books, if you're using a stack of books, start with one book, place it under your tailbone and under your broad hip bones, and then see how that feels. Make sure that there's no little corners or edges digging into you. You want to make sure it feels comfortable and supportive. And then if you get there and you're like, that's not quite enough height, then you might choose to lift up and place that second book underneath. If you're using a yoga block, you might choose to start with that lower setting. And then if that feels like it's not quite enough, flip it onto the medium setting. I generally never go higher than medium setting on my supported bridge. I just feel like I just get enough right from that medium point. But for taller people, that third level might be the way to go. So if you feel like you're on that medium setting and it's not quite enough, see how that tall setting feels. But what we really want to make sure we have is a good, strong support underneath the hips. So make sure your blocks or your books are underneath your hips in a nice supportive way. We want to stay on the strong supportive bones, not in the low back, because there's not a lot of bony structure to help support. So once you've found a supported bridge that's going to work good for you, let your arms find a comfortable position. Let your shoulder heads relax down. And then we want to see if we can find a sense of letting go. Let go of your abdominal muscles, let go through your front pockets, and let go through your tops of your thighs. So see where in the, especially through the front chain of the body, where can you let go? We're halfway through our hold in this position. So do a little quick assessment. Make sure everything's still feeling good. If you opted for that medium height with your block, or you did 2 stacks of books and you feel like it's become a little too much, you always have the option to lower it back down and dial it back a little bit. Whatever level you're on, make sure everything feels good and you can still find that softening through the muscle tissue, breathing comfortably. Take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, start to just wiggle your toes a little bit to make sure your feet feel active, and then press into your feet, lift your hips up, and then slide your props out from underneath you. Take your time as you lower your hips back down to the ground. And then once your hips touch down, just pause for a moment. Take a nice deep breath in. Nice slow breath out. And then from here, we're going to move right into our next posture. So we're going to take it into a figure 4. Right leg is going to come across the left, and then we're going to lift the left leg up. You're going to thread your hands through, find a comfortable handhold, and then soften. So rather than really pulling the legs into the chest, just soften here. So find a handhold that works good for you, and then settle right into that shape. So I find that interlacing my fingers behind my thigh is a great way for me to find a handhold that I can do comfortably. But sometimes that leg just bends in and kind of catches hold of your arm. So let your leg help you a little bit. Let your interlaced fingers help you a little bit. And then see if you can just find some space for your shoulders to relax. Invite a softness into your belly. And then you might find here, as you soften into this shape, that just naturally and gradually the legs will draw in a little bit closer to your chest, but you don't need to effort into that. You don't need to pull the legs in or anything like that. You can just let your legs naturally do what they do. Take one more breath here. And then we'll slowly release. But as you slowly release, you're going to step your right foot off and then grab hold of your right knee. Pull your right knee into your chest and let your left leg go nice and long. This next posture, we're just going to do for like 3 cycles of breath. So we're not going to hold it for the full 3 minutes, but we're going to take that right knee over into supine twist. So bring it over to the left, over and across the body. Let your right arm open out nice and wide, maybe even turn your head to the right. And then just take 3 nice deep breaths here. Awesome. And then when you're ready, slowly and mindfully bring that right knee back into your chest. Bring your left knee into knee. So both knees are going to hug into the chest, give a little squeeze, and then set your right leg down and we'll set up our figure 4 to the other side. So left leg is going to come across the right, and then you're going to lift up and find the appropriate handhold that works good for you. So as you thread your hands through, you might choose the back of the thigh, you might hold onto the knee or the top of the shin. I personally like that little basket weave, so I interlace my fingers. And then instead of pulling the legs actively in towards the body, just allow your handhold to soften. Let your shoulders soften, and then just let your breath do the work for you here. Take a nice generous inhale, let your belly inflate. Allow your shoulders to soften. Take one more breath here. And then when you're ready, slowly start to let that figure four go. We're going to pull the left knee into the chest, let your right leg go nice and long, and then supine twist to the other side. So left knee over to the right, let your left arm open nice and wide. Maybe you turn your head to the left if that's comfortable. And then once you've got a nice little spinal twist that's working good for you, take 3 nice deep breaths here. Awesome. And then when you feel ready, pull that left knee into your chest, bring the right knee into meet, just one last little squeeze here. And then we're going to set our feet down and maybe bring them out just slightly wider so the knees can drop in towards each other. Before we come to our Shavasana, we're going to finish with a little Brahmari or bee buzzing breath. So for all intents and purposes, you would plug up your ears and cover your eyes. I'm not going to plug up my ears specifically because I have my microphone plugged into one ear, but once we get all talked out, you can plug up your ears if that feels appropriate. So take a moment to just listen into the sounds of your room, make sure you feel safe and comfortable because you do reduce your senses. So you want to make sure that everything feels safe and you can relax in this position. You'll take a big, deep inhale, and as you exhale, you'll hum your exhale. So your eyes will be closed, your ears will be plugged if that's comfortable to do so. Take a nice full inhale, exhale, and hum. And we're going to do 10 cycles of breath if you feel comfortable doing so. I'll start with the first 3 breaths, and then hopefully you won't hear me anymore because I'll stop humming and you'll just listen into your own hum. So eyes closed, ears plugged, inhale. Exhale with a hum. Once you've completed your cycles of breath, start to find your way into your version of Shavasana that works good for you. You might choose to stay in constructive rest, or you might choose to find that more traditional shape and any other variation of the body that feels good, but get yourself comfortable. So if you're in a cold space, maybe put on your socks, your sweater, or your blanket. Give everything a moment to settle back in if you rearranged your body. And then see if you can come back to that quiet stillness. Eyes close down or soften your gaze. Allow your breath to return to a natural rhythm. start to bring your awareness back into your body. Gently wake up your fingers and wake up your toes. Maybe invite a deeper breath back into your lungs, and then start to find some bigger movements with the body. Wiggle your ankles, wiggle your wrists, move your knees gently. And then if it all feels good to do so, take a big good morning stretch like a yawn. Stretch your arms up and overhead, and then just find that nice big long reach through the fingers, through the toes. Take that nice big giant inhale. And then as you exhale, let your body soften, and then slowly and mindfully start to find your way up to a comfortable seated position. Take your time as you come on up. Awesome. And then as you start to find your way up into that more comfortable position, finding that upright spine, stack your hands right on top of your heart, and then bow your head to your heart. And then just for a moment here, just listen back in. Listen to the sounds of the room that you're working in. Maybe hear the sounds slightly outside of the room that you're working in. And then as you bring your awareness back in, can you find the sound of your breath? Breathing in love and gratitude for yourself, for your mind, for your body, and for all of your hard work. And breathe in a little extra love for your friends, for your family, for your pets. And then breathe in a whole bunch of extra love for the people that it's hardest to find that love and gratitude for. And when you feel ready, gently lift up through the top of your head, gently open your eyes. I bow to you. Happy Monday.